pretty interesting getting over here and realising what some of the bits that I've been ordering and getting on board a ship actually did, and seeing why I needed 20 of them and not 12. Apart from that, I suppose the best moment was, Alvera, you'd probably agree, was arriving in Lisadilla, which was a school where we were doing an installation, and we arrived in the afternoon and we worked, and then by night time, flick, the switch was on in the school for the first time. On came the lights. Unfortunately, the first thing that happened after that was on came the country music. And then after that came the opening star attraction of the film night at Lisadilla School with I know 30 odd little kids enraptured by the showing of the Born Ultimatum. Yeah, very good.
Your normal, guilt-ridden Catholic, inwardly evil, outwardly plastic. I was up in Darwin at this barbie. I was drinking warm beer, eating salami. I saw you and my soul flew out the window. My soul flew out the window. You must have heard me sigh as you slowly walked on by. My soul flew out the window. You with your spirit so strong and steady, you made the other seem so dumb and petty. You saw me notice you, you gave a little shake. You made my knees tremble, you made my body ache. My soul flew out the window. My soul flew out the window.
Third time, or fourth time actually, that I've been to East Timor, and this time what we were doing was particularly remote. We did 4 installations in places which are 2 hours or 3 hours further remote than a place which is about 8 or 9 hours drive out of Dili. So that makes them particularly remote, and in fact a couple of good candidates for the worst road in the world. However, we got there, we had a magnificent view getting there and back. We had the minor threat of being shot at by Indonesian troops on the way back, but that's a part of the fun of driving along the Indonesian border. We installed solar power systems into three medical clinics, which are remote from Swai, so remote that they have no fuel for the generators, no form of electricity, no way of actually having either lights or medical instruments after dark if they have problems. So those places now have a mains electricity supply which is capable of providing for most of the normal needs of a medical clinic. and for the usually Cuban at the moment doctors who they try to entice to live out there in the boondocks. So we've made it actually easier for them to have a doctor out in these remote places because these doctors now have lights. This is the second year which we've worked with a group of people from SWI, and this year that they have gained enough confidence to do systems really without much supervision on our part. There's a few things that they might get wrong from now and then, but by and large I think we're confident now that there's people in SWI who are capable of installing these systems. In fact, we're going to try this out by sending over a couple of systems shortly and get them to install them without us being there, which is when we'll really find out how much they've actually learnt.
Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. In fact, it's downright finger-licking. When you see it run in your backyard, grab that bird and squeeze it hard. You don't need any excuses, just think about those deadly juices. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. Well, you don't need any excuses, just think about those deadly juices. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. I never trust a bright-eyed gypsy. She'll take you out and she'll get you tipsy. You wake up on the wrong side of town with your money all spent and your pants pulled down. Well, I want a woman from the Kama Sutra, one part angel, one part Buddha. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. Yeah, I want a woman from the Kama Sutra, one part angel, one part Buddha. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. Free beer is better. Don't send me an email, write me a letter. Newer, brighter, whiter and cleaner. Remember folks, the grass is not greener. Well, you don't need any excuses. Some you win and some you lose it. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. I want a woman from the Kama Sutra, one part angel, one part Buddha. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken. Yeah, you don't need any excuses, just think about those deadly juices. Nothing tastes better than the neighbor's chicken.
I'm working here in Pohorem Kovalima, which is on the West Timor border. We've just had a kindergarten built, and I requested ATA to install a solar system so that we could have power. In the kindergarten there's also an English room. I teach English in the afternoons to adults, and it's going to be really wonderful that I'll have power in the room. I teach normally 3 till 5, sometimes 3 till 6 in the afternoons. The generator, the one generator in the community, which is the priest's generator in the parish, doesn't get turned on till 7 in the evenings, which is very awkward for my teaching times. So I'm just so grateful that now I'll be able to use power. It's going to make my teaching so much easier, and it's going to be of wonderful benefit to the students. And next year when we open the kindergarten, it means that the teachers there will be able to use music and a range of other things to teach the students. So thank you ATA, and thank you to the team that came. Obrigada wa'in.
Timor was really spectacular. It's really pretty, you've got a really nice coastline, unbelievably mountainous, and so I found out why it takes 2.5 hours to travel 35 kilometres or so, because you're up and down and around all the time. Well, our first project was installing solar power at a health clinic for the German doctor Christiana, who's been living in Traloka, just near Baucau, for the last year, and in East Timor for the last 2 years, and is hoping to stay for another 6 years. And she treats about 80 to 100 people per day, she said, with all kinds of illnesses and malnutrition and warped backs, and to see little kids that haven't eaten for I don't know how long, and yeah, tries to help everybody and bring them back to good health. And we installed power for her home so she could listen to her music and have lights, and power the fridge for the laboratory that keeps the samples.
Freedom of speech, but we all talking at the same time. We say we want peace, but nobody wants to change their own mind. Goes on and on and on and on and on for 1,000 years. 1,000 years, I say, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. What language are your tears? Are your tears? Everybody wants to live life of kings and queens, but nobody wants to stay and plow the fields. Everybody wants to tell their neighbors how to live, but nobody wants to listen to how they feel. So it goes on and on and on and on and on for 1,000 years. 1,000 years, I say, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. What language are your tears? Are your tears? But what I got to say right now is love enough, yeah, love enough, yeah, love enough. Or can you love some more? Is the love enough, yeah, love enough, yeah, love enough. Or can you love some more? Is your love enough? Yeah, your love enough? Is your love enough? Or can you love some more? Is your love enough? Yeah, your love enough? Is your love enough? Or tell me, can you love some more? It goes on
1,000 years, I say. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. What language are your tears? Are your tears, gentlemen?
What Mother Nature gives, mankind refuse to let live, taking the universe in their own hands. Oh yes, now, short-circuiting the positive, charging the negative, causing the most unusual circumstances. Every day we rise again, battle up and fight again, hoping that our hearts will receive our love too.
Oh, yeah,
Blessed words we speak again, of the works to do, my friend, for us to live in this garden of Eden.
So tell me, is your love enough? Yeah, your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Or can you love some more? Is your love enough? Yeah, your love enough? Yeah, is your love enough? Or tell me, tell me, tell me. I say, what language do you laugh in? What language do you cry in? What language do you dance in? Make romance in? What language do you make love in? Or pray to the above in? What language are your fears? What language are your tears? Believe in coexistence.
The really good thing about swine was because it was dry and then there were no mosquitoes compared with Dili, in which there are lots of mosquitoes. That's the end of your
The country in Western's all right as long as it's the song that I like, which is Big John. Big John by you know.
This one happens to be Golf in
Some people
Canberra.
say it came from New Orleans, where he got in a fight with the Cajun Queen, and a mighty big blow from his big right hand sent a Louisiana fell to the promised land. That's Big John.
Last night we were sitting in the
Big John.
There's a very big difference
we were
between
sitting in the Golden Dragon. I got nothing useful to say, apart from the fact that I'm not going to drive a four-wheel drive up that end of East Timor again, ever. Ever.
How did I find Timor? A absolute...
Well, everybody, I hope you did enjoy that movie. It was a labour of love by Justin, and you can see he was an avid filmmaker, and he's getting better actually. I've seen him on to his other things. But that gives you a really good taste of some of the challenges of operating in Timor. Now, the ATA has been operating with the IPG to improve their lives. If we're going to do that, we might as well just tinker in the sheds like most traditional ATA members do. Blokes in the sheds tinkering away. Although the demographics changed quite a bit over the last few years, which is good to see. So, but what we found is that when Mick Harris went over to Timor in 2001, it was with a sense of guilt more than anything else, because he felt like a lot of us did, that we'd sort of we'd abandoned them back in '75 when Indonesia invaded. And so there was a large part of that was to go over there when they got independence, to see what it was like, to get a first-hand experience and to see if there was anything that he could do personally. And what he found is that they had nothing. The place had been absolutely destroyed. The militia had just trashed everything they could on their way out of the country, including dropping hand grenades into machinery and into power stations and ripping up stuff. They had a power supply in Akusi, which is an enclave which sits in West Timor, that's part of East Timor. And that had been completely destroyed, and the power system had been up and running for less than a week. And when they were just sort of doing the final commissioning, as they left, hand grenades into all of the generators, all of the other equipment, blew it to bits. And so after all of this work to put in this huge power system, it never effectively got switched on. Now, the only thing you can see of it afterwards was a couple of power poles and all of the aluminium wires being used as fencing on farmers' property. So there's a whole lots of things that were really bad condition. So when he came back, he got together with a few other ATA people and said, what can we do to help? And we realised that our real strength, one of our real strengths, was that technical knowledge. And we had a lot of people who were really itching to be able to use that technical knowledge in some positive way. And so out of that, the IPG group was formed. And we went through a whole lot of things. We started off really, really tiny and went over and did a trip. And then we came back and presented to the board to try to get formal approval for the ATA to actually run it as a project and have the endorsement of the ATA. And he had to jump through a few hoops to make sure so the board was sort of comfortable that we weren't going to do anything stupid and ruin the ATA's reputation, which is fair enough. And then we went from there. Now, you saw Anton in that particular film, who was the project manager for quite some time. We grew rapidly. We found when we got over there that we could spend a lifetime over there doing stuff over there and still not finish. So what we found was we had a lot of friendship groups and people were just desperate to get some stuff over there as well. And so there's this perfect fit. You had a group of people that had really good technical expertise and a group of people who really wanted some people with technical expertise to help improve the lives of the people over there. And so it grew really rapidly, and then we got Anton as a full-time project manager. This is just by way of an introduction, brief history, and I'll go through it a bit more in the slides, the next slide. And I'm not sure, some of these slides have transitioned, some of them don't, so my apologies. I actually stole some from Anton's slide pack. So I might just hold it there for a second. So basically what happened was after that period of time, we overextended effectively. Anton left, we got a new project manager in, Prabir, who had a different style and was more strategic rather than operational. And through a variety of circumstances, we managed to get ourselves in a bit of bother. We started spending more money than we should have, and so the funds we had available were reduced. And then we found out that we were in a position where we hadn't communicated well with a couple of the friendship groups. We got a few people offside, and at the same time, Prabir had left, and so we had this double whammy where we hadn't really done a good job of managing our finances towards the end. We had a little bit of poor communication going on, and then the project manager left, so we had all those three things combined. And since last year, we've dug deep and got all the teams back together, and we sat down one night and we said, do we want to continue? And it was a resounding yes, because we wanted to be there for the long haul. What we didn't want to have happen is we didn't want to go in there like the Great White Hope and put some systems in, get some happy snaps, come back home and say to our friends, look how wonderful we are, and then the system falls over 3 months later and nothing ever happens. That was rubbish. If we were going to do that, we might as well not go. So we always had a long-term plan to be in there for the long haul, to go back and visit, to make sure that maintenance was happening on the systems, to make sure training was conducted. So every single visit we go to East Timor, we train local people. We've run training courses both formally and informally. We helped put in a TAFE-style accreditation course in solar power through the country. So there's a lot of good things, and we continue to go back there. So because of the meetings we had last year, we spoke to a couple of friendship groups that we had some strained relationships with, and frank and honest discussions, and we've got ourselves back on track. So what we've done now is we've reformed pretty much the way that we had formed back in 2002, 2003, where we are behaving and are treated in the same way as any other branch. So we are effectively a non-geographically based branch. So just like the Melbourne branch, or just like Coffs Harbour or any of the other Sydney branches, we are set up exactly the same way with the convener and treasurer and the committee, and we're looked after by the office in the same way the branches are, for better or worse. So that's where we are right now. And so right now we've got a group of projects, including ones that we promised to finish off for a particular friendship group, which is the village lighting scheme. Got all that back on track. We've got some new projects to come through, and we're back rolling again. So from my perspective, it's a really good place to be now, because we're all really excited, reinvigorated, and everyone's made a renewed commitment to manage it. The downside, of course, is now the volunteers have to do all the management and all the boring paperwork stuff rather than getting out there and tinkering. So give me a screwdriver any day. I'd much rather be out there fiddling around and building stuff rather than doing the paperwork, but that's okay. It has to be done, so it has to be done.
Are the training programs still going?
They are. The training program, one place in particular, we had a number of training institutes that we trained up over the last few years, including, and most of that was done through funding from AusAid, and that was effectively training people up. We did training and we did train the trainer. So we trained up some local teaching institutions over there, vocational and trade training institutions, to teach their students up to about a Cert 2.5, Cert 3 level. So maintenance, installation, and it's not quite design. It's what we call select and modify. So in other words, they can do the broad load part of it, but rather than go down and do a detailed technical design, we've basically set up basically a look-up table, if you like. So work out all your loads and everything, then you look up the system that fits it best fits, take those components, and then you can just tweak it around the edges, which essentially is what everybody does anyway. Once you've gone through the Cert 4 course, you very rarely design a system from scratch. You do the load analysis, and then you look up what systems are available and you pick one. So that's pretty much what they're doing over there. But and some of those guys have got really extraordinary skills. The really nice thing is that a lot of those guys come and help us when we're over there. So they'll spend a week or 2 weeks with us, back out in the field, helping us, and it helps their skills as well. So and some of their students at the same time. So we've now got to the stage where earlier this year I was doing another project for another organisation, still through the ATA, but an organisation called Mercy Corps, running a training session again, and we were using the staff that we trained 2 years earlier to actually do that, and some of their students. So in one place in particular, a place called T-Bar, Senefpe, which is a trade training institute, and if you walked in there into this particular training institute just outside of Delhi, you'd swear you're in a TAFE facility here, a really well-run TAFE facility here. They're really, really well set up, and they do a lot of really good work. So we're working with them constantly with various projects. And when we go over this time, we'll visit them again and maintain that relationship, because we're very lucky to have them. So, anyway, national overview. Timor, I don't really need to spend too much time on these. Neglect for 400 years. They were ruled by the Portuguese for 400 years. And treated pretty much like serfs. And then, next slide. And then they had Indonesian electrification when they came in, and they put some electrification in, as I said. Just keep going we'll just keep going. And then on their way out, they destroyed it all. So they had nothing again. So, and there's a couple of pictures. We're just going to slide through some of the pictures and stuff. Now, the interesting thing, and I'm not expecting you to read all this, but just to get the gist of it. In 2002, the Power Authority said they're going to meet the electricity needs of East Timor, and they had this big mission statement and everything else. And then, fast forward to 2007, they've still got a similar mission statement. Fast forward again a bit further on, keep going, and now the reality is low levels of service around the place. Power doesn't run 24 hours in most places. It's getting better. It is getting better in the last few years. This slide was from a few years ago. And brownouts are quite common, and 130 volts, not a lot you can do with it. So that one of the biggest selling items, even for people who have 240 volt power, is a little voltage stabiliser, if you like, and it sits in between the socket and your power, and it's an auto transformer, and it just sits there and works its guts out, trying to maintain 240 volts no matter what happens to the input, and that's the only, because otherwise things just go. It's amazing how many devices will just spit the dummy if the voltage drops down below about 150 volts and never come up again. So lots of, including inverters and stuff, they don't like it either, or battery chargers. Sorry, not inverters. We've lost a couple of battery chargers in the early days. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Turns out they don't like running at 120 or 130 volts, strangely enough, and they just tend to pop all the output stages. So you keep going. You also get things like this sort of standard of wiring. This actually isn't too bad, but there are some scary things like a school in just up north of Timor, and it's a secondary school, Catholic school, and we went in there because the inverter was playing up, they said, and we eventually found that somebody had a faulty power board sitting somewhere else in the school, which is what was tripping the inverter. But in the process, we went through one of the classrooms to check the wiring, and they've got benches all around the walls, and they've got all the power points, and they're Indonesian power points, which I really don't like much at all, and no switches on them, but all the wiring is on the outside and just connects them in daisy chain. But the thing is, where they've actually done it, they haven't actually screwed into the back of the terminals. What they've done is they've put wires out there to make it easier, screwed them onto the walls, and then twisted the wires together. But then they have insulated them, because what they've done is they've taken the outside little sheath of the cable and just slid it over the top there. So you've got these twisted wires together, 240 volts, with this little bit of plastic just sitting there, just here, where the student's sitting. Oh, what's that do? Lift it off, put it back on. Not a problem. About 50 of them all the way around. So lift your finger, touch it, and see what happens. And the only reason it's even vaguely safe is because we're running a floating system, but it is connected to the mains power as well. So yeah, there's an orphanage that one of the guys, another team went to several years ago. They said, "Oh, who did all this wiring? It's okay. It's not great, but it's okay." And they said, "Oh, that's our electricians over there, 2 12-year-olds from the orphanage." They figured it out themselves. So no formal education, and wiring standards are, yeah. So the silver bullet, this is what the government was going to do. A national scheme, yep. We'll just keep going. Heavy oil, they've changed it a little bit, but still heavy oil. And they're forecasting a fairly large demand. Yep, keep going. And yeah, $400 million plus. They're going to use that oil revenue. And this is what it looks like. So a main ring all around the island, and then at the header power station there, they've got a couple of big Chinese diesels running heavy crude, and then another set being down here at Butano, providing this ring system with a couple of other little short bits there. And it seems to be okay. And then you've got distribution stations, and then you've got different things. And it looks pretty impressive, and it is sort of working. Dilly's got 24-hour power, they had that already, so about Cow. And the system is largely okay. But the thing is, at least 40% of people won't get power for another 5, 10, 15 years, at least. There's another 20% of people who will never, ever get power. They will just simply not run the lines there. They've run the lines into some pretty remote places, but there are another 20% of people who will never get power by mains electricity, so they have to have some other solution. Yep. So the renewable energy policy, and again, keep going, we'll just keep rolling through this one. They've got a whole lot of different things they're going to run with. Small, medium and large solar, keep going, yep, and a bit more. And it's unreleased, on hold, and nothing seems to be happening. So this is the proposed renewable energy projects to supplement some of the others. So you've got some solar, which is in yellow, and some water, some hydro, biomass. They've got quite a few little biomass gasification type things going on, mainly because of one particular person, Eddie's Almeida, who's worked in Sydney for a long time. He's been pushing his favourite little project. That's the only reason to go on. But in order to have a really good biomass thing, you've either got to have lots of the appropriate types of vegetation or lots of cows. And they've got a few ox and everything, and a few places have cows, but a lot of places they just don't have the animals to get the material to run a biodigester. It's just not going to happen. So that's going to be relatively small biggies. Okay, let's keep going. And this is why we're here. High mortality rates, no electricity. 2008, most of them don't have electricity. $400 a year. It's a little bit more than that in the cities, but not much more. If a reasonable wage for most people is about $10 a day US, a good wage is 20. The government pays as much as 30, and so does some NGOs, but a lot of people are on less than that. You just don't have a really clear understanding of that until you actually go out and pay $5 for a meal and realise you've just spent somebody's day's wages, or you're spending $20 to $25 a night on accommodation and breakfast, and that's somebody's weekly wage. When you translate that back into our dollars, you just go, well, that's impossible. How can people live like that? Live on that? Well, it's really easy. They don't. At least not like us. Right? And kerosene and candles. A lot of people use candles, and people go, "Oh, candles, that's so romantic. I love candlelight dinners and soft music and a nice wine." And you go, yes, until you have to do your homework by candlelight, or until you have to do anything else by candlelight. And candles are ridiculously expensive, even here. If you had to run your house on candles, you'd be spending a fortune. We complain about electricity bills, but candles, wow, they're through the roof. And kerosene the same. And it's interesting that we've actually worked out that in a lot of cases, and this is one of the things that Mercyful's trying to do as well, is set up micro businesses to sell solar powered equipment. It's actually cheaper in the short, even in the medium term, to actually put in solar, even at cost, even if they have to pay a reasonable amount for it, than it is to keep running kerosene lamps, because it's actually quite surprisingly expensive to use kerosene for lighting. And so solar works out cheaper, even with the maintenance costs, than kerosene in a lot of cases, in Timor and other countries, developing countries.
Just a quick one.
Yep.
The annual income is about $400.
A little bit more, a little bit less. Yeah.
What's the cost of living?
Around about $300 to $400, probably more. People are living in pretty much poverty. In Dili and some of the other big places where you're on, if people could be on $20 a day, and if you've got two people earning, if you're lucky enough to have two people earning, you can live okay. For example, if you take out the accommodation component, you're just talking about food and basics. As a foreigner, or a Malay as they call them, you can probably get by on, if you were really frugal, you could probably get by on $5 to $10, maybe $10 a day, right? And that's difficult, but you can probably do it. $20 a day, no problem at all without accommodation, right? For a foreigner. But for a local, you can live at the same similar sorts of levels for much less than that, obviously, because they're not going to get charged as much. Plus, the way we eat, for example, and the way they eat is quite different. So there's a lot less protein in their meals and things. So a lot less meat, a lot less fish. And it depends where you are, of course. But even people that you would expect to be eating well, at least in country and farming, struggle at times as well, either because the land's degraded so much, or poor farming practices. So a lot of slash and burn farming goes on still, which is a bit of a problem as well. Yep. So we'll just keep flying through these. These are all fairly, I think I meant to pull this slide out, but basically, we all know how important education is. Just having a light. It's amazing what a difference having just a little 3-watt LED lighting in a house is. It's just astounding when you have nothing. Right? When your choice is to burn another candle or go to bed at 7 o'clock, right? Or talk in the dark, or talk around the fire. Having just a couple of LED lights in place, it just makes a huge difference. Kids can study, women can actually do some micro businesses. Guys can do some work in a workshop somewhere. It's quite common to see in areas where they only have power for 6 hours a night, for example, that everybody works in the evenings because there's no power during the day. And suddenly, 6 o'clock comes, all the sanders fire up, all the saws fire up, all the carpenters start working with power tools. So that's the only time they can work. What are they doing at 9 o'clock at night? And then you realise that's their 6-hour working day. That's their window of opportunity because they've got power. And it's really interesting when you go to a house or a hotel. A lot of places in the countries, they don't have switches on the lights. Everything's hardwired. And at 6 o'clock, when the generators fire up, your lights come on. And at 11 or 12 o'clock, when the generators shut down, your lights go off. It's an automatic system. People pay just a monthly fee for electricity unless you want to pay more, and you've got a 2 amp circuit breaker on the front door, and you just pay for electricity. When it comes, it comes. When it doesn't, it doesn't. To give you an idea, most houses in Australia, older houses, have a 40 amp circuit breaker, and new houses have an 80 amp circuit breaker. And these guys have a 2 amp circuit breaker. All the lights in the place are all compact fluorescent, have been for some time, because you can't afford to be wasting electricity by putting ordinary light bulbs in, because your circuit breaker will keep tripping. It'll keep dropping power. So they have low energy bulbs in there. And then they've got to be careful sometimes if they plug a TV in. I can't have that 2 lights on because it's tripping the circuit breaker. I know what we'll do, we'll just wire a piece of wire across it, it'll swing. I've seen that happen too. Alright, keep going. Yep. So there's a traditional cooking stove. The old 3-stone fire. So, and you can imagine living and working in a dark place like that. Let's keep going. There's what the ceiling will end up looking like. And there's your homemade kerosene candle, or kerosene wick lamp. So it's not even an efficient kerosene lamp. It's not like a hurricane, not even like a mantle lamp or anything. Yeah, pressure lamp. These are just the old hurricane style lamps that will be able to light out. Yep, keep going. Now this one here is an old slide now of this is basically most of East Timor. We have also over here in West Timor we have a kusi sitting over here isolated. They were really hard done by because they are so isolated. Really hard for foreigners to get there just because of getting visas, because you're leaving Timor, going into Indonesia and going back into Timor, both ways. So most of the time you end up going by boat because it's simpler, because you don't have to worry about visas and everything. And just because they give you a hard time with visas. Locals, it's not a problem, but foreigners it's still a bit of a problem because you're just jumping through the right hoops. So these are sort of areas where we have put in systems, or somebody else has. All right, so you've got mostly solar, and there's a couple of water and biogas. We didn't do any of the biogas, but a lot of these solar ones would have been ones that we had something to do with. Yep. Here's a typical example. It looks a bit silly with a little tiny 5-watt panel or 10-watt panel sitting there, but that's enough for some lights in the house, and that's really what the critical thing is. You see up the top there, so it's all black, that's from the smoke and the fires inside. One of the advantages of having smoke, it's really interesting because I'm also involved in the solar cooking forums. And one of the things they've found out when they've actually cleaned up the smoke and everything from internal fires is in certain tropical countries the rates of dengue fever and malaria increase because the mosquitoes can now get in. So even though women and children are being killed by smoke inhalation and getting cancer and all the rest of it, at least they don't get malaria. So it's just like you just think these poor guys, they just can't get a break. You clean up the cooking for them so they stop having lung diseases, and then suddenly they start getting malaria and dengue fever and other blood and mosquito-borne diseases. So there's other things that have to happen as well. And we forget how much we've done here to control mosquitoes, even as far south as Melbourne, where we don't have a big mosquito problem, but we can have if it's not looked after. Yep. So just some more happy snaps. This is a typical guy. This guy here is a trainer that we trained as part of that program I mentioned earlier. Practicing on one of the control boards. So all your typical sort of things that you get. Obviously these lights and this switch would be somewhere else in the system. This is a small system providing 12-volt lights, but it's also got a little tiny inverter just to run phone charge or something like that. It's very typical of the sort of system. And if you look at your fuse box, you'll see the same kind of fuses. It's all the same kind of gear. There's nothing really special in the systems that we put together. But he works for Senai, one of the training organisations. He's one of their electrical teachers. He came on board to do all the solar stuff as well. Very clever, a bit pushy, but nice bloke nonetheless. But certainly knows what he wants and goes out and gets it. He's actually a really good driver of various programs in the country. Yeah. Again, another shot, just some people outside the house, typical house, sort of slit bamboo stuff. These guys here, I think these guys here have been trained, so they've got their little kit there for doing some solar power work. So they've probably just finished the training or just finished an installation. I'm not sure about that particular photo. Again, another shot of the installation work. If you saw that in an Australian house, you'd probably just put tape across the front door and quarantine it until it could be fixed. seen some just horror things. Yep, let's keep going. Quality, you can see, no installation standards, no quality control. There is starting to become some national standards, there are starting to have some specifications, but the key thing is this one. Right? These mean nothing. None of these mean anything unless you've got capacity. If you don't have inspectors, if you don't have people who work to a standard, if you don't have people going out to check on the standards, who cares? Right? It's the same as the unregulated solar industry here. Not so bad now with grid connect stuff, but certainly anybody can put a shingle on their door and say, hi, I'm this whole solar installer. Unless you want to get the rebate, you don't have to be accredited. Now that's normally not a bad thing, but you can't have no guarantees about the quality of their work. And for extra low power stuff, and I'm talking about not 240, I'm talking about 24 volt or 12 volt systems, anybody can come in and install a system and can be almost up to any standard they like. And nobody can say a thing about it because there are no real enforceable standards. There are standards and you can get them around other things, but not solar per se. So, but it is getting better. Yep. Another typical shot. This is in the this will be in the wet season, so all the hills are all green. Come the dry season, that just goes totally brown, and any vegetation that is there just gets burnt. Usually, it's still got slash and burn mentality. It is changing slowly. Keep going. Now we'll get into a few more projects, a few more pictures, and again, stop me and if you want to ask some questions. A lot of these ones were things we've done, pictures we've done over the last 2 or 3 years, and then I'll very briefly talk about what's coming up in next month. Yep, let's keep going. All right, so again, I'll skip through these pretty quickly because this is sort of rehashing what we've already done. But basically, we've got a great partnership between a whole lot of different groups: local admin, Australian volunteers. They're absolutely wonderful. Local NGOs, manufacturers, and friendship groups. A whole lot of people. Yep. Now, village lighting scheme. This is local people trained to install and maintain small lighting systems. We're talking about systems that are now, they're a 10 or 20 watt panel. They used to be a 5 watt panel, and 2 or 3 LEDs, usually either 1 watt or 3 watts. And we've been really fortunate because LED technology has just been advancing so quickly that the quality of light that we can put in now compared to even 2 years ago is amazing, because the efficiency and everything of the LEDs have become so much better. So a system that we would have put in 2 years ago compared to a system we put in now, just with the new quality lights and everything, is like twice as good, which means the batteries don't get stressed as much. We have learned some things about the systems. It always happens, no matter where you are, and Timor's no exception, neither is Australia, that there's a thing called load creep. So you put a system in, and everybody thinks, oh, that's wonderful, thank you very much, it's just what I wanted. And you say, right, now this is as big as it can be, because this is what we designed it to do, and that's all the money you had. And they go, yep, that's fine. And then they look after it, and then a month goes by, 2, 3, 4 months, then they go, let's just put another light in over there. Oh, and let's put a light in over there. And it still works, the system keeps working. They go, okay, well, the system's fine then. Let's go and do this, let's put a phone charger in. And so gradually the load just creeps up and up and up, and then one day the system stops working. You come out and you see that they've added so much stuff onto it that the batteries are being stressed and they can't keep up. And the solar panels can't pull enough energy from the sun to top up the batteries with the amount of power they've been pulling out. And it happens here and it happens over there, so it's a real big problem. We found that these systems were very susceptible to it, so over a period of time we've increased the size of the systems, and we've gone back and retrofitted. So we've put in bigger batteries and we've put in bigger panels. The controller can stay the same, but we've put in bigger batteries and panels.
So batteries don't last?
Not if they're not looked after. What we were finding was batteries that we were expecting to last 5 to 10 years were lasting 2 years. And when we went back and had a look at what they were doing is they were putting the systems on much longer than we were expecting them to, or some of us were expecting them to, and they were bypassing some of the systems, some of the controls. So Alan Hutchinson, who you saw in the movie, the CEO of Plasmatronics, designed a little controller for us, and it is really aggressive in maintaining the state of the battery. It really works hard against the user to try to protect the battery. So it's got a timer, so when you put the lights on, they'll only go on for a certain period of time, and you have to press the timer again to bring them back on again. I think it's about an hour or 2 hours. And then if it detects that the battery's getting a bit low, it starts shortening the amount of time, right, to deliberately warn, and then it starts flashing lights on it and everything to say, you know, you are in danger of damaging the battery, stop it. And then if it gets to a certain point, it just refuses to come on, which works most of the time for most people, but some people get a bit jack of it, and so they unscrew the wires and hook it straight onto the battery and go, oh look, it works. And then they run the light all night and the battery's dead because they've pulled too much out of the battery. So it's always a challenge, not just in there but over here as well. But over there it's even a more significant challenge, especially if you're in a very remote community.
They use car batteries over there as well?
They do, but they don't last very long. Car batteries are really poor at doing solar. Solar batteries are really poor at starting your car. And I've had a few instances where people have knocked off the bigger batteries out of the solar system and put an old truck battery in its place, which is really annoying for a couple of reasons. One, it's our bloody battery, leave it alone. But more importantly is they've basically destroyed two things, because when they put the truck battery on the solar system, it's not going to work. It just won't. The battery will die too quickly. And the solar battery is not actually made to deliver the cranking amps in the truck, so it'll work a couple of times and then it'll be cactus as well. So, and then you'll have two systems with broken batteries and have to start it over again. So car batteries and truck batteries generally are no good for solar. They might last for 6 months or even a year maybe, but yeah, they might not even last that long.
So how do these people communicate with the volunteers back in Australia if they're having these problems? And they obviously don't pick up their iPhone and call you directly, do they?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, but it actually does happen on the odd occasion. But normally what they do is they go through their friendship groups. So one of the things that the IPG did was we said we do not want to go in there, again, to be this and impose what we think is the right thing on these communities. So we work with friendship groups and the local communities, and we only go in response to a request. So we never, ever initiate a project. We always go into the friendship groups and they talk to the communities and they say, what do you need? What do you want? And then in response to that, they come back and say, they've had a look around and they'd really like some lights and maybe enough power to run a TV or a laptop or something to watch movies in their community centre. And so we'll say, okay, right, so let's figure out what it is, how long they want to use it for, how many lights, what their needs are, and we work out and we do a load report. And from that we do a system design, and then we start going around, we price some of the stuff, and we go back to the friendship groups and say, right, based on what you've told us, the equipment will cost about this much. And so once by the time we get over there and logistics and hire a car and do this will be the cost of the project. If the community and the friendship groups, local donors here, are happy with that price, then they'll raise the funds, then we'll write it into our project plan, and that's when it will actually happen as a project. So we never ever go in and just say, hey listen, we've got this great system, let's put it here for you guys, because it might be totally inappropriate for what they want or what they need. Now, we haven't always got it right, but we've managed to get it right most of the time. And the other thing is that we do follow-ups as well. So whenever we go back in country where we can revisit places, or we have some friends there now who revisit, or the friendship groups go in. So the friendship groups have got very good ties with all of the local communities. So for example, Chris is involved in Friends of Same. They do a lot of work around Same. So we've done quite a few projects around there, not just because of Chris, but because there's a need. Including one that we've done in there, which is for one Nabalan, which is a centre for blind children. And so we've got a small system in there that allows them to run their stuff during the day when there's no power. And we've revisited that place several times because Chris's group has got a very good close relationship with that particular organisation and the district of Same. So when there are problems, they communicate it back either directly through local technicians who have trained up now, or back through the friendship groups, and then Chris will come back and say, listen, there's a problem over there, I think it's this, next time we go over and visit, we'll have to sort it out. And that's what we do. And sometimes it comes back on us because it's a warranty issue, and sometimes it comes back on the friendship groups because of either something's gone wrong, which is not part of a warranty, and so something, and then friendship groups organise for funds and we handle it that way. So that's pretty much how it works.
Upgrade the system because of the creep problem.
Yeah, or upgrade the system because of that low creep that I spoke about before.
So that means the community groups are coming up with some funding to pay for the equipment, but then the labour is free.
Essentially, yeah. And what we're doing now is we're working more and more. We're trying to work more and more. We're getting to a point now where we've got to be careful that we don't start undercutting the very businesses we've been trying over the last 10 years to set up. by having this skills transfer. So we've been training up all these local technicians, we've been training up all these other people to have an industry, local industry that can support itself. That will only work if NGOs like us don't go in there and undercut them. So we have to be very careful about what kind of projects we pick up now. And some considerations becoming a bigger and bigger consideration. Is this something that they could get locally for a reasonable cost? Or is it something that's not going to be a reasonable cost because people in there either can't get the equipment or the charges are too high, and it wouldn't be done unless we did it?
But we could be helping those local community
Yes.
to actually raise the money, or we could help.
Yeah.
Money.
And the Mercy Corps,
so they
yeah.
can then employ their local people.
Exactly right, and that's the Mercy Corps model is along those lines, where they're going to set up local retailers in what they call kiosk, which is a local corner shop, if you like, and then the major suppliers in Dili will wholesale to them, and then they'll have their locally trained technicians who will buy and install from them locally. So that's one model that the Mercy Corps is following through. And the other one which we have in this village lighting system, it's actually more than 800 households now. We do put larger systems in the communities, but the village lighting scheme, we've got lots of trained technicians now that do all the installations. We just provide the equipment, and we're going back there this year to provide some more equipment, to provide some more training. We'll do a couple of installs with them to make sure that everything's okay, and then we leave again and they continue installing. And we've run that model for quite a while. What happens is the community actually has to, part of the whole thing is they have to provide people to be trained, and that's a condition we put on every community, but this one in particular, these communities in particular, and the communities have to set up a committee which manages look at the administration of the systems, because every householder that gets one of these systems, they get charged about $2 a month, which is a lot less than they've been paying for kerosene. And that $2 a month goes into a pool, which is for maintenance and paying local technicians. So the technicians get, whenever they have a call out, they have a fee, so it's just a local call out fee, and whatever repairs need to be done, the fund, that pool actually funds that. So for example, they found as part of this whole thing that some of the batteries didn't last as long as they would like, and they knew that they were using them quite heavily. So they were able to fund the purchase of some batteries locally in Dili to actually replace some of those batteries and some of the systems that have failed. So that system is working quite well. It works better in some communities than others, and we've got some communities that are very hard-nosed about the whole thing. If you're not paying, we'll go and take your system out and we'll give it to somebody who will pay. Or if your system breaks and you're not being paying, well, you're not getting any service, you're not going to get it maintained. And other places that haven't been quite as good at doing it. So there's a learning experience. But by and large, it seems to be working quite well. Yep.
And where are the wholesalers in Dili getting their equipment from? Are they dealing straight directly with manufacturers in China? And
yeah, a lot of it comes from China. A lot of it comes from most of it comes via Indonesia. So that they actually a lot of the wholesalers there will be getting it bulk purchasing through Indonesia. Some get it directly from China, but a lot of it through Indonesia. So they'll either go to the major centre that they're going to is Surabaya, I think, in Indonesia. So, and we also get some of our stuff. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing in this, when we're supplying this stuff, we're actually importing directly from China, and it's being freighted directly to Dili, so it doesn't come through Australia at all. So we're basically purchasing in China for direct delivery to Dili, and then we bring it through customs with the help of Rotary, and do it all there. Other stuff that we've done, we actually put together here. So we have a lot of the bigger batteries and a lot of solar panels, some of the solar panels and stuff for the bigger systems. We'll assemble it here, and then we pack it into a Rotary container, and then because we piggyback on Rotary and look after each other that way, and then it goes off to Dili from there. In fact, it should be arriving. The container should be arriving in Dili in about 3 weeks, I think, or 2 weeks hopefully. I hope it's 2 weeks because it's got to clear customs and everything before we get there in 4 weeks. So it's getting we're right on the pointy end now, so it's getting exciting. Yep, let's keep going. These are some of the partners and supporters over the years. M&H is still looking after us very well, so are everybody. But at Rotary, we do we've got a really good relationship with Rotary. I can't stress strongly enough how good Rotary has looked after us. And anybody who's involved in Rotary will know they're a great organisation to be involved with. Yep. And this is, again, just talking about some of the stuff we've already talked about, so we'll fly through these. We've got a lot of slides to go through. We also do a few water pumping projects, not many, but we've done a few. I found out just recently that this one's being redone. There was a problem with it somewhere. I don't think it was the solar part of it, but there were some issues and some political issues as well. So you've always got to be aware of those. One thing that happens is that you can get administrators or chefs and chiefs in the area who like to look after the equipment very well. And so they'll insist on having it in their premises so they can look after it for you. And so they tend to get most of the benefit out of the system. We've found that on a few occasions. So there's a little bit of that goes on. You've got to be a little bit wary of that. And something here, there was two groups who were both claiming effectively ownership of the system after it was put in by a third group. So I'm not sure what all the wrangling was about, but I think they've sorted it out now. But in the process of them coming to some sort of reconciliation, there was a little bit of damage caused to various parts of the system by various players.
So is that to bore water or is that to streams?
This was a stream, so basically it's not really clear here. Solar panels down here. It was done in conjunction with the local water authority as well, and so they had a big concrete tank which was being fed by a stream, but they had to get the water up to the local village and to the police station further up the road. So it was a pumping system to do that. Actually pumped the water from down lower up higher. Yep. Now this is just some more happy snaps of typical places. We might just sort of like keep cycling out. So just stop there for a minute. This was actually earlier this year. This was part of the when I was doing the work for Mercy Corps. What I was doing was on the weekends I was actually going up on behalf of the ATA as a volunteer up to a few remote areas while I was in country. It made sense to. And this was a particular area where we had the issue where we hadn't been communicating very well with the friendship group, and because of it we missed the window that we had last year to complete one of the projects. So as part of that whole re-establishment of our friendship and everything, I went up to this region one weekend with the local priest and went and visited a few sites where we were going to put things in place and checked out some of the systems to make sure that things were working, or where they were working, where they weren't. And this gives you a really typical example of the kind of things that people are living with. So this woman here, that's her two kids, and that's her mother with two more of her kids, and she's one of the lucky ones. She's got a wheelbarrow to carry the water, and they're carrying, each one of those is 10 kilos, and I've seen little kids 6, carrying one of those, or carrying some, they put it down, carry another 100 metres, put it down, and they'll walk for kilometres. Now she's pretty lucky, she's got a wheelbarrow, but she's carrying that full of water. She does that every day or every second day, probably, up the hill to her house. This is, I think this was her house, and you can tell from the look of the walls and everything, that's actually bamboo wall, and all of this is black as. So you can guess which room it is. Kitchen. With a 3-stone fire, and that's all the smoke. So what you've got just here is a little LED. So before that they were operating either just by the light of the fire or by candles or something in the kitchen. And now with that, at least they've got some decent lights. They don't have to have a fire on all the time, because the opening in that place is really small, and that's all split bamboo. Somebody else had to take that photo because I wasn't going to walk on the floor. It was a lot of places have dirt floors, but this place actually had a raised floor. But it was the thin bamboo stuff, and I put my foot on it and went, no way, no way. I would have just gone straight through it, which would have been quite embarrassing for everybody. And that black up there, it's a thatched roof. Okay, that's the next slide. This is another house, same house I think actually, but you can see the tin roof and another LED light. So what they call a house, we call a shed, basically. That's actually inside this house. It was a different house, sorry. That kitchen we saw before, needs a bit of work. You can see the top there, the darkening from where the smoke's come out. This house here, there's Grandma again. Again, it's just boarded up window, or just a shutter on the window, bamboo, thin tin. There's the solar panel for the village lighting scheme just there. So a little 10-watt panel, I think that one is. This here, there's me at the back. He's the local caretaker for the church. I can't remember what the proper title is. And these are all the kids. This is Sunday morning. He's one of the technicians we train with his toolkit, which I went through with him to make sure that everything was okay, and it wasn't. We're taking some more tools and some extra leads for multimeters and such up there, and then another toolkit that we found that we're also fixing up as well. So these people are all in their Sunday best, just come from church. So that's the best clothes they've got, right? And then the everyday clothes is much less than that. So they've got not much. And again, I think that's a community building in behind. Yep. Now this is some of the training stuff we were doing. This person here, she's one of the teachers, one of the new teachers, and that's the guy up the back there is the head of the teaching engineering teaching department, electrical, and these are all students. This is our translator. This woman here, and that's one of the other teachers, this woman here, she was really happy to be at this training course because her husband gave her permission. She had to get permission off her husband first to do the training. And she said she was really lucky because he was nice enough to give her permission, otherwise she just couldn't come. It's just an interesting thing. Again, all the training people in a small outside Presbyterian church, which is very unusual. The community is mostly Catholic, a small number of Muslims, and a small number of Protestant religions. And this is one of just a little outdoor church, and we just put a panel up the back there, a few lights inside, and a few security lights around the back. That system there, again, just the standard system. You've got a regulator and fuse box and some switches going into a school. Yep. And this is outside the school. What the guys here, they're testing one of the panels here. So testing the various things with multimeters and everything before they take it up onto the roof. So it's not a bad schoolyard. Yep, keep going. And that's the guys actually manhandling it onto the roof of the school. These school buildings were built by Australian volunteers as well. In the area that it's in is only accessible at the moment by foot or by car in the dry season, because the road that did lead to the village has been completely washed away in floods a couple of years ago. So in the dry season, they actually built about a 3-kilometre stretch of road, the local village's dirt road, so they could access the stream bed, so cars and trucks could get through to put deliveries into the school or into the community. But then when the wet season comes, only foot traffic can get through, because then there's no car access. So it's just a shot of them setting it up on the school roof. Yep. This is a system, and I might tell the sad story. This is part of the sad, sorry tale of Los Palos, which we'll get to later on. But we had a problem with an inverter there. But a typical system. This is in a weaving centre in a very remote place called it's just out of Los Palos, and it's not Laoana. I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but anyway, the three batteries for the system. And this cute little kid here, the reason he's in there is because when we went up there, most kids, when they see me, freak out, especially little kids, because Timorese people are quite small. So all of a sudden, he comes in this dirty, great big white bear with a beard, and little kids take one look at me and start crying. It's really depressing. But this little kid, as soon as I got out of the car, he looked at me, came running up, put his arms up, right, and I picked him up, right, he gave me a hug, and I put him down, he grabbed me by the hand and took me into the house. And his mum just went, she never seen anything like it. Here he is leading this big giant bear into the house. You know, so I was quite impressed. So he gets 2 shots. All right, next shot. But he's the local son. He's one of the son of the local chef. This is the other room. This is standing in that same room where the system was. This is showing the floor and everything, and the walls of the weaving centre. This is a weaving centre for women who weave the Thais cloth, which is ceremonial cloth. And this allows them to work in the evenings. So we've got about 8 LED lights. This is the one you put, one of the ones you put in, Chris, isn't it?
I designed it, helped to design it, I didn't go.
Design it. And it wasn't that made it fail, by the way. The inverter itself failed, not because of the design.
It's a beautiful
very conservatively designed. So you can see they probably won't ever finish that floor, so it's just concrete. They just lay down some bamboo mats and work in there. That's another shot I just put in to show people. That's the same village, and that's just some bloke taking his cow somewhere, who knows, in the back looking after them. That further up the road, we actually climb up through all that mist and everything. It's quite magical. It's one of those things where you get up into the mountains and everything. I'm sure people who've been up the mountains know it's like being in another land. It's quite fabulous. This is back in that small chapel, with thatched roof with a panel on the roof there. That guy there is a legend. You can't quite tell. He's just bathed in sweat. We got there, and Timor's a really hot, sticky place. If you've ever been to Northern Territory, you'll know. And tropical countries, it's hot, and sticky, and humid, and just standing up as an effort. And even the locals, we got there, and there's no wind because of all the palm around. And the locals there, they were, oh gee, it's hot, isn't it? And I went, really? You think it's hot? If you think it's hot, I'm in real trouble. And this guy's up on top of this roof midday, just caked in sweat. He was up there for about half an hour at least, and got down and drank just copious quantity. And even his mates down there cheered him, because a couple of them got up there in the lasted 5 minutes and had to come down again. So let's keep going. So again, just some happy snaps of around the coast, not far from this place. You can see some of the lights we're putting in there. These guys just scrambling around. I don't know how they just don't fall. It's just beyond me. Little homemade ladders and everything. They're just athletes. They really are. Yep. Some of the other projects that were done last year, I think it was last year, the year before. Children on the Edge, another one. Not a bad sort of system. 750 watts of solar, 400 amp hour battery bank. So 8 6-volt batteries. Big 40 amp charger, because they do have access to power. One of the things that we do try to do is, people always come to us and say, how much solar can we put in here because we need it? And we turn around and go, well, what have you got there already? Oh, we've only got power 6 hours a night. And then, yes, we could put solar in for them, but then they'd be paying for all these solar panels, which they don't really need. All they really need is a battery and an inverter and a charger. When the power comes on at night time, you charge up the batteries, and then you use the system during the day. So instead of having to put solar panels on to provide the power for the batteries, charge it off the mains, because it's there anyway. Why have that additional expense? But it's a bit of that sort of like, it's a cool factor to have a solar panel on the roof sometimes. If they really insist on it, we'll go, well, yeah, we can. It's a bit pointless, but we can. But most of the time we're able to talk people into a solution which fits their needs, rather than coming up with some whiz-bang flash design that looks cool but doesn't actually achieve what they wanted to achieve for the money they've got. Yep, keep going. Another one, which was the Akusi, again over in Akusi, community lighting, and yeah, just an ongoing scheme for community centres. So we've put in lots of these systems of various sizes for different communities, community centres over the years. There's quite a few. Again, basically usually a single 80 watt panel, 100 amp hour battery, and some 12 watt lights. Bloody burning. And we've done dozens and dozens or hundreds of those systems probably by now. Yep, keep going. Silk factory. We've done one in a silk factory. We're using silkworms and mulberry bushes, and it's pretty amazing actually. It's quite good to get out there. And we had a couple of systems in there, a 24 volt system again, and we had a few small ones. But we've had some problems with this system, and we still haven't successfully managed to get a fault-free system running at this place for a variety of reasons, not all of which were apparent at the beginning. But and for example, the fridge that they bought in after the fact was way too big for the system. So every time they switched it on, it tripped the circuit breakers. Well, every second time they switched it on, which was pointless, because you switch it on and you go, okay, it's working, but of course it cycles off and on. So next time it cycles off and on, it trips the circuit breakers. So we've had some issues along those lines, and also poor maintenance. So we haven't been able to effectively train the people that needed to be trained, which is quite frustrating. Let's keep going. And now a few more happy snaps. You'll notice here, some people might notice this stuff here, it's called top hat, and some people might recognise what top hat is. And if you've been in a shed or something with metal framing, you'll recognise it straight away. It's just a rolled piece of galvanised steel, and it's called top hat because if you look at the end of it, it's got a shape a bit like a top hat. And so that gets screwed onto places, and then you can screw stuff onto that. We found that that's by far the most effective and cheapest way of putting panels on of all, because what you do is you put the panels upside down on the ground, screw the top hat to the panels, lift the whole assembly up on the roof, drop it on the roof, and then just drive screws through the top hat straight into the battens on the tin, and it's job's done. Rather than trying to use some of the methods that we use, particularly in Australia. But whether or not it'll get past the Australian standard, it might actually get past it. But I don't think we find too many people who'd be keen to have that on their roof here. But over there, it's not a problem. You can see it again, same sort of construction technique. In fact, no, it's not. I thought that was you, Chris.
Do they have cyclones there?
Not really. They do, but it's very rare. And
have any panels been damaged by weather?
don't think so, actually. I think a panel. I think we've had one or two panels or one or two systems have been damaged when a whole roof has collapsed for some other reason. But I don't think we've had any panels that have been damaged by anything, including by people throwing rocks at them. So they're actually pretty strong.
There has been some very strong winds there.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to a cyclone, I would think.
Yeah, but we haven't actually lost a panel off the roof. If anything's happened, they've usually lost the whole roof rather than the panel. So it's actually quite a good solid construction method. Very simple system here, battery box, just a plastic tub basically, and then the control system up the top there. This one here has also got normal power, so we've actually got a changeover switch on here so the power's available, feeds it, and when the power falls and comes off, automatic changeover switch automatically switches over to the solar power system. Yep, and there's one of our guys just explained to people how to operate it. Let's get going. Volunteering opportunities. There are a lot of different volunteering opportunities in Timor, not all of them in Timor. All right, so if you want to volunteer and you've got some skills that you may not think are necessarily very relevant, but you don't want to travel to East Timor, that's fine. We've got lots of things that have to be done this side, logistics and things. Obviously, we've got design teams coming up with system designs. And let's get another slide up. Yep, next one. And we've got planning and logistics and everything, working out. This container actually lives over in Dili now. One of the things that we did, and Chris had a lot to do with this, was actually setting it up so we had all the shelving and everything down here. We store the equipment.
I think that is me.
Fold up, yeah, that is you, yep. And a young guy called Ned. That guy there was a Sparky, just got his ticket, came over with us, was so inspired. I found out recently he's gone back to school and he's doing a degree in environmental science. So he was so inspired and went back and got that. So he'll have a really good skill set. So I'm looking forward to him coming over again soon. And then we set up a workbench and everything here, packed the whole thing up, freighted it across the Dili, dropped it down in the coffee co-op where we've got it now. And so we've got a mobile, we've got basically a workspace where we can go out there. Yep, we'll go to the next slide. There's training, training opportunities. This is again a group of trainers. We've got coordination with friendship groups. We've got installation itself. So again, the same sort of thing. That was a place called La Ten, I think, near Bahia. So if you would like to volunteer but you don't know if you've got the right skill set, don't worry, because there's lots of things we need, and you probably do have skills that we need here if you don't want to go over to Timor. Or if you're able to lift a box and carry it somewhere, we've got a job for you. All right? If you want to be trained on how to use a screwdriver, mate, you're in with a chance. All right? So there's lots of options. You don't have to be technical. You don't have to have a degree in maths or a degree in engineering. You don't have to really understand electricity all that much. All that sort of basic stuff that you'll need, we can train you in if you need it. Or if you just want to be hands and feet. Or if you just want to come over and be the official photographer, we have people who do that as well. All right? Now we try to discourage people just being the official photographer because we'd like that we have all hands on deck. But certainly there are opportunities if you want to come over. There is also another opportunity with the IPG, which is not international. They're only just starting to redo this after we had a false start, and that is we're working with Indigenous communities on the top end and doing work there. So some of the smaller communities that fall through the cracks of the government programs and things like bushlight and stuff, there's opportunities there. So if you don't want to leave the country but you still want to do this kind of work, there are opportunities coming up for that as well. But I'd encourage you to keep on the mailing list if you're not already on it, to get on it, and also to keep an eye out for on the website. We're slowly revamping. I've got thousands and thousands of photos and also of other people on all aspects, and we can just overload you. But we're hoping to get some more stuff up on the website with a few more photos and a few more stories and stuff. Now I think that probably is the last slide. I'm hoping. Oh no, one more. There you go. There's Mick Harris. He was the one who kicked the whole thing off. This guy here, local guy. His name is, I'm just trying to think his right name, not what we call him, Senor Xavier. He's actually over in Perth at the moment doing a degree in renewable energy. So he's managed to get enough money, scrape enough money together, and he's taken off from the family for effectively 2 years, and he's going for his degree. He's actually a mechanical engineer. I was teaching at Dili University. He was a translator for a while, and he's just got inspired as well. Wants to to go down that path and thinks there's some money to be made by locals in Timor, which we're more than happy for people to do. Yep. Oh, here's another shot. This is Bakia. So we do use some bigger batteries, not just little ones. These are 2-volt batteries, 1100 amp hours, which is quite a big battery. They weigh 68 kilos, I think, from memory. And yes, they're bloody hard to move in the heat and everything. And there's part of the battery box. We actually, to put them in a battery box, because there's 24 of them in the system, we built the base down, we started loading the batteries on them, and then we built the box around them, because it was going to be too hard to lift the batteries over the box and put them in. So we put all 3 sides of the box, and then we wheeled all the batteries in, and then we nailed the other side of the box shut. And that is, as they say, it. Thank you very much. One last thing just before we go. There's a couple of photos here. I just want to show you a few photos. The sad and sorry tale of Los Palos. I'll give you the condensed version. One weekend on the trip, I went to Bagia because we know some people in Bagia and we wanted to check the system out and everything. But our primary mission was to go to a place called Los Palos. And Los Palos, there's the big place of Timor, and Dili's here. Los Palos is way down here. And it's about 6 hours drive on some reasonably good roads, actually. So it's about 140, 150 k's away. And so we got told the system, the weaving system that I showed you there with the little kid, was broken. Now I'd already been to the centre, the weaving centre, a couple of years before, so I knew where it was, so that wasn't a problem. And so they said the inverter's broken. So we said, right, we'll get another inverter from one of the local shops, StarTech. And I went down there and talked to the guy and I said, listen, we need an inverter, we need to go, this is on Saturday morning that we have to leave. So I said, can we get an inverter off you? Once I installed it, because I'm not sure if the one down there is actually broken, so if I can just grab it off you and take it down there and fit it and then come back and pay you if we need to use it. And he said, yeah, that'll be all right. And then there was this almighty fight with his wife who actually runs the place off him. And there was this huge screaming match in the office as she realised what he'd just done. You can't go giving away equipment. But anyway, we got away with it after about half an hour. So we put it in there, and I had 3 local guys with me that two of them I was training, and one from the local TAFE centre, and the other one I trained previous year. So we headed off down to Los Palos, and it took us a bit longer to get down there than we thought. And on the way down there, we heard there'd be massive rains in Dili and flooding at the hotel, and there was water this deep and everything. So we thought, oh, we missed that one, that was good. Got down to Los Palos, and it's getting quite late now. We get down to the place, and I pull into the driveway, and this Australian woman comes out, and I said, oh, hi, I'm looking for Deb, and she goes, oh, no, she's not here. She's gone back to Australia. Oh, that's a bit unfortunate, but anyway, yeah, we're here to fix up the thing for the weaving centre. She goes, no, they've all gone. Well, who are you? Well, my husband and I just decided to rent this place. She just happened to be Australian. It had nothing to do with the people that we were supposed to go and see to get this weaving centre done. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll just come, because we were trying to contact people, and we couldn't get in contact with anybody we were supposed to get in contact with. So we just went on spec. Right? So you can see it's already happening. It's already happening. Lack of planning, lack of So I think, okay, well, what are we going to do? And my guys are looking at me as if to say, well, you're in charge. Do something, right? And I'm going, but I'm a foreigner, And so we stood and talked to her for a few minutes. She goes, look, I might actually, we'll talk to the landlady because she lives next door. And she might know. So she goes and talks to the landlady. And the landlady, they're talking for a few minutes. She goes, oh yeah, she knows where the weaving people have moved to. So she knows one of the people. So she rings her. And so now it's getting darker and darker and darker. Now I was expecting that Saturday, I've got to go back to work in Dili on Monday. So the idea was go up early on Saturday, fix the system on Saturday, stay overnight, go back to the gear Sunday morning, drop into the people I need to drop into, back to Dili Sunday night, everything's sweet. That was the plan. So now it's 6 o'clock on Saturday night. We still haven't got anywhere near the weaving centre. It's getting dark, we've got to find accommodation. And we go down and we talk to this woman, and she says, oh yes, it's not here anymore. It's down, the name of the place I can't remember just off the top of my head, which is 2.5 hours away, down some even more remote tracks. I'm thinking, oh. So we find a place to stay the night. She agrees that she'll take us down there the next morning as a guide. We said, great. Next morning, we get up, running a bit late because the guys had a late night the night before, and so we finally get moving. we go down to this place, find the weaving centre, meet the little kid, have a good day, go in there, check it, yes, the inverter's broken, pull the inverter off, put the other inverter on, and they're going to plug everything. No, don't do it yet. Let's just switch it all on, do it up in this stage sequence, right, connect the power up, switch it on, bang! Flash of light out of the inverter, puff of smoke, nothing. Red light. Shit. And I looked at it, and I looked at them, and they looked at me, and I got the voltmeter out, I checked it, it's dead. Right? Dead out of the box. And I stood there. So this is now 2 days, or a day and a half. And they say, what do we do now? So we pack up and we go home. Because we've got nothing else we can do. So we pack it up, we had another look at the other inverter to see if there's anything we could possibly do with it. No, it's dead as well. So we've come all of this way not to fix a system. So we've still got a broken system. We've got to apologise to the chefy and his family and the community and everything. And then as we're packing up, they say, oh no, you've got to stay for lunch. We've already made lunch for you. I'm going, oh, we've got to get to here. So, because it's 2.5 hours down the road, we've got to get there, say hello, blah, blah, and head off. So that's fine. So we stopped, we had lunch, we had a talk and everything, and the whole thing. So now it's about 5 hours later than I want it to be. It's now getting to mid-afternoon or early afternoon. So we put that, so we finally get away and thank you, we're sorry, you know, we understand, we know you'll be back and everything. Now, I think, right, we can get to Bagia. Oh, hang on. The woman who was the guide for us, who came down with her daughter, has now picked up her friend who was in the township, but she needs to go back to Los Palos, which is in the opposite direction. So now I've got to drive 2.5 hours back with the woman and her family, drop her off at Los Palos, say thank you very much, no, we don't want a coffee, it's okay, right, and then head back, go the coast road, back to Bagia. So we've actually got to go right along the coast and then drop down to Bagia. And that's actually about a 4.5 hour drive, 5 hour drive. It's now about 3 in the afternoon. So I'm thinking, I promised we're going to go there. If we go there, we'll stay an hour, and we get going, we might get back to Dili maybe by about midnight, 1 o'clock. Fingers crossed. So we get there, we go down towards Bagia. We get almost to where we're going to go, and I stop because there's only half a bridge over this cavern. I'm going, what the? So we get out and have a look. It looks like all the concrete's in place, and I see the tracks across the bridge, and I see the trucks further up the road. If they got across, I could certainly get across at a troopy. So the guys jump out and they get across the other side and they guide me, and just sort of inching along, going, I think I'm all right, and then get across the other side. Of course, easy, not a problem. All right, all load back in the car, finally get down to the place where I'm going, a friend of ours, who I discover has just got back from a funeral of her mother-in-law. 6 months after her husband died. He died late last year, which was one of the reasons I wanted to go down there, because there were a friend who wanted some condolences and everything. So now, so we've got there, and you know, everyone's sort of still sad. We say hello to him, and all I want to do is I want to show my team the big power system along with the big batteries. So they, yes, it's really nice, had biscuits, had coffee and everything. All right, well, we've got to go. Oh, but I've cooked dinner. Oh, really? Yes, we've got to stay for dinner. So we stay for dinner. Now it's 7 o'clock. Now it's 8 o'clock. Now it's 9 o'clock. Finally, I say, right, we've got to go. She goes, you know, we just go up, we'll have a look at the place and the system. Yep, that's fine. We go up to the place, open up the door, they say, oh yeah, it's working really well and everything, and I'm showing the guys that we've got all the laptops now set up, there's 17 laptops and there's sewing machines, there's all sorts of gear. And it's just brilliant, because it's one of the biggest systems I've ever put in. And then I say, okay, let's have a look at the system. No, you can't do that. Why not? We haven't got the key. What? We haven't got the key to the back room where the system is. And it's a real problem because 2 of our laptops are locked in there as well. We haven't had the key since November. This is March. What? What? What do you mean you haven't got the key? Well, the guy had the key, her husband, and we don't know where he put it. And I'm there, I'm standing there going, I've got a key. Oh, really? You've got a key? Yes, it's called that. Right? She goes, oh, you're a funny man, you're a funny man. And I'm thinking, if only you knew how much I want to keep that door in. Right? Anyway, one of my guys finally got in there and he got in with a screwdriver and after about 20 minutes almost, managed to break the lock of the door and got us in there. We had a really close look. So we're looking, and now the girl who's with us, one of the students, she's pointing at a watch, because now it's 10 o'clock. Right? And we crawl all over the thing, I show them all the stuff. We finally get away, and she wants to lift back to her house, then she changes her mind because she can get a lift with somebody else. So it's about 11 o'clock when we finally leave. We now have a 2-hour drive up to the main road and then a 5 to 6 hour trip to Dili. So we get on the main road, we'll get back up, we negotiate the bridge and we go screaming through the place and everyone's getting tired, we're all starting to fall asleep. I'm driving this troopy and we get on the main road and we finally get to a section of road which is beautiful and straight. The only thing you've got to watch out for is goats because they love to sleep on the road. So every so often you'll see this lump of goats on the road and just slow down until they get off and then get on again. Don't usually have to worry about ox at that stage because they're all asleep, but you've got to be a little bit careful. Right? So we're going down the road, and because I'm tired and it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sort of cruising down the road and there's moonlight and everything, and there's water on the road in spots, so you've got to be a little bit careful. But this one section of road was really good quality road, nice and straight, just really good to drive on. But I'm still just sitting on about 80k, just cruising along. Got the radio, we've got the music blaring. I had some music. I mean, they all got into the music and old stuff, and they all like Billy Thorpe. It's great. Right, so driving along, doing 80k's. Another big pool of water on the road, you know. So I backed off a little bit, and then I thought that's a really weird looking hole. Slam on the brakes. Just locked all 4 tyres up and came to a screeching halt 3 metres before a gap in the road. Overnight, while the rain's been coming through, it's undercut the road and washed an 8-metre section of road out, which is what I thought was the water on the road. And it was only because I was only doing about 60k's, just like slammed on the brakes and just stopped. And I just sat there for a second, and everyone almost threw people through a windscreen because I was sleeping in the back seat. Everyone got out and had a look, whoa, this is amazing. And then had to find a way down around the road and through the creek and back up the other side and get up. So then after that I had a big fight with a guy trying to sell me petrol who wouldn't give me a receipt and everything. Now this is about 4 o'clock in the morning at this stage. Get back to where I picked everybody up in Dili, and we're sitting there because I'm trying to find a way to get into the compound to get the guy's motorbike. And he goes, well, why are we waiting here? I said, so you can get your motorbike. He goes, but I didn't come here on a motorbike. I said, I saw you on a motorbike. He goes, that was my friend's motorbike, and he took it back with him. So you don't actually need to stop. No, I'm just going, you're going to give me a lift back to my place. Oh. So they dropped everybody off, got back to the hotel at 7, had an hour's sleep, and went back. And after all of that, still didn't get the damn system fixed. So that was the sad and sorry tale of Los Palos. And it just goes to show 3 things. Don't ever expect anything to work properly in Timor. Right? Never take a chance with the weather. And make sure you plan the bloody thing and test the equipment before you leave on a really, really long trip. And the next day, at the start of the lesson the next day, was planning for maintenance visits at school with 2 of these guys. And I said, so what do you think? They said, you are hopeless. I said, okay, well you can start the class off when we go back there on Monday morning, right, and do the class. So it was a good lesson in what not to do in any case, and it made a really good case story. So I'll just leave you with this last little photo just so you can see what it was like. Nobody yet. I took it back and he was furious. I didn't. I made sure I was nowhere near his wife. So that was basically a picture of the road that we stopped at. Right, so you can see the whole thing's collapsed here. This piece is tilted right up, and there's the other section of the road at the back there.
So what stopped you?
I know, I could have just pushed it over the top of it. If I'd have been travelling 100 k's not paying attention, probably did. That's as simple as that. So the fact that I lived to tell the tale is just absolutely awesome. And then that's where the car stopped, that far from the road, and give another perspective of what it was like. That's one. It's not a good shot, but that's one of the guys standing on the raised platform. You can see the other side, the other end of the road up there. And so always expect the unexpected. And that really is the end of my talk. So thank you very much. Yep.
Over here, has that
it's translating over there as well.
Has that been unilaterally good news, or had it caused some problems as well?
No, it's I won't go into the details. The only problem I've had is trying to convince people that just because we paid this much money for a lot of panels that are sitting in stock doesn't mean we should try to charge people for that much money because the replacement panels are only half the price. So in other words, if we pay $10 for a particular panel or $100 for a panel, we can't realistically charge people $100 for those panels because the panels we're buying to replace them are only $50 now. So we should be only charging people $50. we're going, oh yeah, but we spent $100 back then for those ones. No, but that's already gone now. So it's a financial discussion with different people. It's not got nothing to do with the ATA, it's a separate discussion entirely. But in terms of what it has done is it's changed the way we design systems. Batteries are usually the weakest link in a system, and they're usually the most expensive, often the most expensive, but panels have been very expensive. So what you try to do is you try to very carefully balance the size of batteries and the size of panels, because panels traditionally were expensive. So you try to keep the panel sizes down as small as you can to minimise system costs. Panel prices have dropped so far now that our whole design strategy has changed, and it's true of all solar installers who are doing standalone systems. It doesn't really impact the design philosophy of grid connect. But what you're doing now is, because batteries are now by far the biggest system cost, then you oversupply them with power. So you actually increase your number of panels, reduce the batteries, whereas before we would actually have battery banks that were big enough to, say, run for 3 days, with 3 days of power with a certain size panels. You just double the size of the panels. You guarantee that even on poor performing days, you were going to have enough energy to dump to refill those batteries, so they don't have to be as big to keep the system performance and reliability up. So that's the key change, is that systems now have smaller batteries and larger panels for that exact reason. And as panels, there is a limit to how far you can take that, because there's a limit to how much you can physically pump into a battery over a short period of time. But that's generally the change, the major change. So you'll see systems now with bigger panels and smaller batteries for the same price.
Battery prices coming down as well?
A little bit, not much. They don't seem to be. They sort of incrementally a little bit. I think as China ramps up production more and more, we have seen the batteries that we're using in the village lighting scheme prices haven't increased. So the battery price has been sort of holding steady. So in real terms, that means they're dropping. Because they're generally just gel cells. No, flooded cells, too much maintenance. For this sort of thing, you want maintenance-free batteries, and that means either gel cells, because they're cheap, or AGM. AGM are better in some ways because it's they're a bit more forgiving, and there's no danger of explosion, or very, very little danger of explosion. But they have higher current capability as well. So for a lot of reasons, but they're more expensive. So and for those who aren't sure what the difference is, a normal flooded cell is like the old style you had in your car. You have to keep topping it up with water. It's distilled water all the time, just a liquid inside. Gel cells are basically exactly what I said. They put some additive in there to turn it into a jelly-like substance. So it's not liquid, so you can sort of turn it upside down, and they're sealed then. You don't have to maintain them. And then AGM is a activated glass mat. They have a glass, like fiberglass mats inside them. They put just enough in there to wet a sponge. So there's no free liquid floating around. And because of that, it doesn't matter if you accidentally punch a hole in the side of them, there's nothing to leak out because it's all just absorbed in the foam in the glass mat. Yep.
How is the wind source?
It's not too bad. The wind, in some spots, it's pretty good because it's mountainous, obviously. So there are a number of wind turbines there. We had a wind monitoring station in Arturo, which, if you saw the picture of Timor, a little tiny island just north of Dili, about 30 k's off the coast, and that's also part of Timor. And we had a wind monitoring station there, which provided some pretty good results. And there's also a bigger wind monitoring station about halfway between Dili and a place called Baucau, which is the second largest city, or actually used to be the capital of Timor, and it's where the international airport used to be before Dili was made the capital. Now they're thinking about turning it into a military airport. And so there's some mountain regions there around there that have got some really good prospects for wind. So there is quite a bit of wind, and it makes sense to put some of that in. Whether or not it happens is another story again. The problem is it's all to do with capital, the same as it is here. Solar and wind and everything are far better than almost any other source, including coal. Prices are starting to trouble. There's high capital cost. And who here has bought a really, really cheap and economical printer? But you haven't bought a cheap printer, but not economical. Because you buy a nice cheap printer, you pay a fortune for cartridges. And that's what happens with coal and oil. Or you can buy a nice expensive printer and don't pay much for cartridges.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the ink system where they have, 100 cells each.
Yeah. But again, you're trading off one against the other, and it's amazing. Even accountants, whose job it is in a company to do all this cost analysis, lifetime cost analysis, and everything, they get home, they make exactly the same mistakes as everybody else does. They just go for the lowest upfront cost. And it's almost human nature. So it's a hard thing to do. I'm guilty of it occasionally.
We might have to wrap it up.
Environment. Morphous better, or are you just going to the cheapest?
No, look, to be quite honest, the difference in performance isn't great enough to warrant putting amorphous panels on. Amorphous panels should be better in almost every single case, especially if they're not glass. Because they're light, they're bulletproof. I've seen panels operating with 3 bullet holes in them, but still going 3 years later, 4 years later. A guy from Western Victoria used to go around with his displays, Marco, and showed, I think it was Marco. Anyway, so they work better in the heat as well, and they work better, they're more tolerant of shading. And they should be cheaper, because they're cheaper to manufacture. In practice, they're not. But given the extra size of them for the same amount of power, it becomes not difficult, but it just becomes really messy to use them. And because the price difference isn't enough, it's not really worth the effort. They should be really cheap, but they're not.
We might have to wrap it up.
Yep, so one last question and then we'll wrap it up, or we'll just wrap it up. Yep, one last.
Do you have any roughly equivalent systems that are 12, 24 volts versus the 240 volts? And if you do, what's the reliability?
Well, what do you mean by equivalent? That's the first question.
Capacity, size.
All right, so, and again, it depends on the use. So, for example, that one I put in here, that was probably one of the biggest ones we've put in Timor, and that was at about, I think it was about 2.5 kilowatts, something like that, which powers 17 laptops, a couple of sewing machines, music equipment, lighting. That's pretty typical. The small house over here, give you an example is if you've got a house that's reasonably solar efficient and it's using about 12 kilowatt hours a day, which is a little bit less than the average Victorian home, then on average over a year you need to provide 12 kilowatt hours per day. So in Melbourne, in winter for example, you would need, we only get 3 hours a day on average, you're going to need a 4 kilowatt system with enough batteries to survive 3 days. If your house is using more power, then obviously have to do more. Most houses that only use about 12 kilowatt hours are usually got gas as well. If you're relying on electricity then for your cooking and for your heating and cooling, then you use a lot more and you need more. I'm currently looking at, because I got a good deal on some panels just recently, I'm looking at putting in about 10 kilowatts on my place in the suburbs, only because I've got a stupidly good deal on these panels. And that would allow me to go off-grid completely. But I've still got to sort out the batteries. I've got some batteries there, but they're not going to last too much longer.
How many kilowatt hours of batteries do you think you'd need?
Sorry?
How many kilowatt hours of batteries?
You'd need, if you wanted to get anything like reasonable reliability, you're going to need around, I've got probably going to need at least 30 kilowatt hours of batteries. At least. You could do it with 20 maybe, but I wouldn't be very comfortable trying to do it with 20. But with 10 kilowatts of panels on the roof, 20, I could get away with 20. Because that would give me a full 24 hours. Because you can only take about half the capacity out of batteries without really hurting you long term.
You only want to take 20%, really.
Well, no, 50% is okay. If you're looking at just a pure cost thing, somewhere between 30 and 50% is your sweet spot in terms of the cost over a long period of time. Because if you want them to last a lot longer, you have to buy a lot more. And if you buy too few, they won't last anyway. So if you do the little curves and everything, you'll find there's a sweet spot between 30 and 50%. But anyway, we drift a bit more. But yeah, that's the sort of thing you're going to be looking at, and it's still not cheap. And ATA's actually got a report, I think it's on the website now, about, certainly was in a recent issue of Renew, about the cost of actually going off grid in the suburbs. It's still not quite there. It's getting there.
When we get to 32 cents a kilowatt hour, I think we get there, don't we?
Yeah, pretty close. I'm getting close to it now. So, all right, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Computer's gone to sleep.